Welcome to Transforming Us podcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm Tamara. We're trauma-informed relationship coaches and old friends here to discuss common patterns and what leads us to paths of security.
You know, people are feeling overwhelmed and disconnected in their painful relationships, which often leads to mental health crises.
We want to share some new ideas and practices to help you cultivate curiosity, compassion, and to redeem the patterns in your relationships, starting with yourself.
Join us on this journey of transforming us. Grab a cup of coffee and let's dive in.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited because today is our very first guest. I have with me a friend. His name is Scott Allender. We have known him for, 3-4 years, something like that, and have just learned a ton from his work. So thrilled to have him here with us today. And so I'm flying solo. We'll do that from time to time when we have a guest. It'll be just me and not Tamara. So yeah, welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Jess. It's so fun to be here.
Yeah, grateful that you were willing to come on. So Scott is an award-winning leadership development professional, certified in emotional intelligence as a coach. He's an Enneagram teacher. He's an author of the Enneagram of Emotional Intelligence. He's a co-host of the Evolving Leader podcast, which explores deeper, more human leadership needed to confront today's biggest challenges. Scott helps individuals and organizations build self-awareness and leverage the power of difference in a rapidly changing world. He has a very practical Enneagram resource, which we'll link in the show notes. It's called the Enneaflip. So we'll get into that and a little bit more about his book and his work. So yeah, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your family, and anything you're currently working on?
Sure. So thank you for that kind introduction. I'm from LA originally. My family and I moved here about 11 years ago. I've got my wife of 16 years, and I've got 2 children who are now teenagers and have been doing Enneagram study progressively for more than a decade now. Got certified with CP Enneagram Academy back in 2020. As you mentioned, then I started writing. For me, writing is thinking and working things out. And so part of the journey of the book was to do that, to kind of write something that I needed to read. And so that's been an incredible journey that's opened up a ton of opportunities and afforded me many chances to meet amazing people who are seekers like me and want to know more about themselves and understand more about the reasons we sort of see, think, and feel the way that we do, the ways that kind of works for us and the times that works against us. And so it's been this sort of privilege of a lifetime to come alongside organizations and leaders and teams and individuals who are just pursuing that. Right now, I'm getting ready in a couple of weeks to go out to Las Vegas to be part of a teaching cohort for a 2-day Enneagram conference, which I'm looking forward to. And I've started writing again. It's too early to sort of give the elevator pitch, but a few weeks back, some thinking kind of crystallized in my mind as I think about the rapidly changing world that we're in, both for the good and for the bad, and how can a deeper understanding of the Enneagram help us to feel more anchored in a world of increasing uncertainty. So I've started exploring some writing that may turn into a book. It may just turn into curriculum. I don't know, but that's kind of what's happening right now.
That's amazing. I really honed in on in your bio, just talking about the power of difference. And, you know, I'm hearing an echo of that in just this rapidly changing world and embracing uncertainty and difference. I think there's such a need for that. And I commend you on that work. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah.
I have no idea where it's going at this point, but yeah, I'm excited to explore it.
Yeah. Embracing uncertainty.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So tell us, at Transforming Us, we really like to do everything from a trauma-informed perspective. So thinking about pain and overwhelming experiences, maybe not having the resources to cope at one point, turning into these pain points. And that's all kind of part of our formation and our personality. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience with the Enneagram and, was there a time that you had a pain point or painful patterns that you
Mm,
realized you needed to grow through them?
mm.
And how did the Enneagram enter in and inform those things for you?
Yeah. I think it's a bit paradoxical, but the pain pattern that became most prevalent for me was my lack of access to my own pain and my own emotional state. And, the journey, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram for those who are listening and may know the Enneagram already. Um, and what's common with 3s is our ability to use our emotions to read others and situations and see what the room calls for and what success means in from environment to environment, all while sort of having lost touch with our own identity and our own sort of sense of what we are feeling and like what's our own authentic emotional experience. So that came out. I wrote about it in the book in the introduction. It eventually came screaming out of me as a bit of an alarm. My body had a panic attack. I went into a panic mode, which I'd never done, as I was driving a car, um, going quite quickly on the freeway. Or it felt like I was going quite quickly on the freeway, and that became a turning point for me to go deeper into my own self awareness work and to get in touch with all the ways that I had been living at a distance from my own experience and sort of trading my own unique identity for the expectations of the people in my life. And seeing that, really starting to see that, opened up a whole new set of pain, right? It's that sort of sorrow and sadness that sits actually under the surface for all heart types. But for me, it was kind of looking back on a life of figuring out how did I lose such great touch with myself. And um, there was another part of that journey, as I started doing that work and uncovering the origin stories and my own sort of small t traumas. So there's 3 sort of categorical instincts in Enneagram theory: self-preservation, social, and the one-to-one. And there's psychological elements to each of them, and those instincts tend to get distorted based on experience, and we end up with an instinctual sequence. And
Hmm.
so one that's sort of always on, like a dominant instinct, and one that's sort of repressed. And as I did deeper and deeper work, noticing I'm social repressed, and that's connected to sort of psychologically connected to father wound stuff. And so that opened up a whole nother sort of chapter of deeper excavation of my own story of kind of the things I did and didn't get that kind of shaped who I became. I don't know
Hmm.
if that answers your question very well, but
Yeah, no, I mean, just that the experience of pain and why you went on this journey of exploring the Enneagram and how it helped you. It's perfect.
I was
Interesting.
all I was already an emotional intelligence coach at the time of the anxiety attack. That's what was particularly alarming, right? So I had been certified for probably 5 years or 6 years or something, and I'd been working with others to help them, make better sense of their experience, build more self awareness. But at the time, a lot of my work, and I think this is the problem of emotional intelligence work in most areas that I observe it, is that it moves quickly to emotional regulation and behavior change, and not enough time to really allowing for the messiness of emotional experience and tuning into what do those emotions tell us about unmet needs or pain or any of that stuff, especially in organizational life, because organizations aren't really looking to buy that product from a coach, right? To come into their organization and let's get real messy. What they're interested in is emotional regulation. I need Bob in that meeting to stop being such a jerk, so come over and coach Bob and help him be less of a jerk.
Yeah.
So it completely changed the motive for my work, the purpose of it, how I approached it. And then obviously my own journey changed dramatically from that moment where I realized the work I'm doing isn't effective and it certainly isn't working for my own life. And so it kind of set me down that whole different path.
Mm. I love the marrying of the two, because, there's a lot of story work that comes with Enneagram work, and those
Mm,
patterns have a story. And so it sounds like, bringing in that piece has been really helpful for getting down to the root of the dysregulation that, sometimes we can learn to regulate our affect, but if you don't heal the root, then where you're at.
And so part of my motivation to really turn this into a book, to overlay emotional intelligence measures with the Enneagram, was it wasn't just a dissatisfaction I found in my own work. When I started studying it, looking at like research around self-awareness, which is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence, the results are abysmal. I mean, it's pretty bad. So it's really interesting. We've got this progressive focus in organizations and elsewhere of understanding and appreciating the role of emotional intelligence. We know that sort of 70%, 75% of people's success and even their well-being is directly attributed to the idea of emotional intelligence, the cornerstone being self-awareness. And yet the research about self-awareness is that whereas 95% of people think they're self-aware, it's probably closer to 15%.
Yeah.
And the more self-aware somebody thinks they are, the inverse is likely to be true. So the good news is it made me feel better about my own lack of success being an emotional intelligence coach, right? Like the results I was seeing were not like satisfying, but I was like, this is a perennial issue. And the issue is two things, I think. One is that we try to build self-awareness without self-knowledge, that at a deep level, most of us don't really know why we do what we do most of the time, or see what we see, or think what we think. We might have attributed some answers to it. We might have externalized reasons for bad behavior or bad patterns in our lives, but we probably, without a tool like the Enneagram, don't fully appreciate what the motivations are, why we get triggered in certain situations, why that person bothers us so much in a meeting, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that part. So we don't have the self-knowledge, and we're telling people to become more aware of the observable behaviors in their life and then pivot and make changes there. But they don't actually fully appreciate or understand why they do what they do. And then the other part of it is what we already talked about, which is creating the space where people can actually experience emotion
Mm-hmm.
instead of moving right to the behavior change that is being asked of them.
Yeah.
Which is never sustainable, because if you change your behavior, if I say, Jess, I need you to be more X, Y, or Z in a meeting, you say, okay, got it. And you might do it for a minute, and then you're mad at your husband, or your kid is not doing well in school, or some other stressor, and all of that goes right out the window because you have no real connection to your why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So good. We mentioned in a recent episode is like a self-compassion practice,
Mm.
like a noticing, naming, and nurturing kind of your emotional states, and not running past it, and doing all three. And so it's just, it takes time. And I think, like you said, people don't enjoy the messiness of
Mm-mm.
the time it takes to become emotionally aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Good stuff. Well, let's talk about your marriage. Are you good with that?
sure.
All right.
I
So,
can make myself sound really good because she's not here. So go ahead.
yeah, well, we love to kind of unpack the impact of on relationships when we look at Enneagram and attachment theory on this podcast. So,
Mm.
you are a 3, you mentioned. So, what Enneagram number is your wife?
4.
Okay. And what's her name?
Yeah. Kristen.
Kristen.
So,
Okay. Yeah, I know Kristen, but I wanted you to introduce her.
yeah.
Um, so tell us a little bit about the 3-4 pattern and what you have learned about that dynamic.
There's a lot of heart energy in the house, right? So both of us are heart types. So the I'll talk about our dynamic at a high level. And if there are listeners out there that have, they're a heart type and they're in a relationship with a heart type, then hopefully some of this will ring true. I think I think when things are really, really good, there's this shared motivation for deep connection, for things to be real, for two people who really, want to connect and be connected and feel connected. I think for the 4, there's a greater desire for depth of connection and probably a greater disturbance when things feel momentarily disconnected, right? But yet it can't be surface level. Um, it can't be anything routine, right? I can't compensate for a deficiency by bringing her roses or something like that. That feel cliche. It's got to be a sort of a need for a deep and authentic connection. And
Mm-hmm.
as a 3, even as a heart type at the center of the heart triad, who's doing his work connecting to emotions, I still will default towards action and task and getting on with things. And so sometimes, and I probably have a slightly higher threshold for temporary disconnection. So sometimes that's where the relationship can get a little, when we're not at our best, where there can be a little wobbliness. But what the Enneagram's really helped is to identify that, to see that, right? I can more
Mm-hmm.
quickly see and know when I'm being too goal oriented or just push through or just sort of um, get on with things, and more compassion and understanding and patience and appreciation for her desire for depth of connection and how important it is for her to feel seen and these kinds of things. And I think both of us benefit when we don't try to live our whole lives from the heart center, right? And so whatever center you're part of as a listener, we part of our work of the Enneagram is learning to reintegrate the head, heart, and the body. And so what the Enneagram's really opened up for us is, well, where is heart work working against us right now? Like, are we too in the depths of emotional need? Are we trying to look to the other person to compensate for that undercurrent of sadness, for feeling that we aren't seen, not just in our own relationship, but in the world at large, that we're not maybe getting enough sort of validation from the world, which is what heart types often want. How do we move into thinking and logic and rationale and access the head? How do we move into action, in general, accessing more of our body? And so it kind of just shows when things are tipping a little bit. And as 2 heart types, we will naturally tip towards being in that kind of sometimes unhelpful emotional state, when we actually need to access other parts of ourselves to navigate the complexity of marriage.
Mm. Yeah.
You're a
Yeah. And
heart type.
I am. I'm a
So
4.
yeah.
So I get that
And
very well.
and Travis, I forget
He's a
Travis.
8.
8.
So we've talked a little bit about that, but yeah, that dynamic of body type and heart type together. Um, he's a body type, but he's always just running, and so stillness in the body is what he needs, and
Yeah.
um, and and accessing the heart, which I can help him with. Or I like to think that I can.
You do. I know you
And
do.
so then I love engaging the body center to help me get into some healthy doing,
Yeah.
because I can kind of ruminate in the head space and the heart space. So,
Does it help you as well to start to delineate between your sort of body budget, your sort of physical sensation and emotions? Because I know for all of us, sometimes we can conflate how we're feeling physically and sort of the
mm-hmm,
energy level in our bodies or how properly resourced our bodies is with actually an emotional state, because it actually can create a negative emotional state, right? You're depleted, this kind of
mm-hmm,
thing. Maybe you didn't sleep well, and so you have this maybe heightened emotional need, but really it's a physical need. Does connecting
mm-hmm.
to your body as a heart type, does that help you delineate?
Absolutely. Yeah. As a coach, that's something I work with people on and has helped me a ton, is being able to pinpoint almost first the physical experience of emotions. So like, where do you feel that? Is it in your chest? Is it in your jaw? Is it in your stomach? Like, and then, some people are quicker to the physical or quicker to the words that name the emotions, quicker to just the emotional feeling, but being able to kind of name it all.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, going to the physical first is the best
Mm.
resource. Um, because I can articulate my emotions all day long,
Mm-hmm.
and yet that doesn't necessarily give me any power over them. The
Mm.
power is in kind of the body work,
Mm.
I would say, for me.
That's great.
Yeah. So you have worked with Beatrice Chestnut, right?
I
In your
studied.
certification?
Yeah, yeah. I studied at her school. Her and Arano Pais started the CP Enneagram Academy. I think
Mm-hmm.
it was 2019. Fantastic school. Anybody that's looking to go through a certification, I think both of them, if I'm honest, are there's so many great teachers in the world, and I would call each of them kind of a once in a lifetime Enneagram teacher.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so glad I
Yeah.
made that choice.
Yeah. I love all of her. I love all of their work.
Mm,
But then there's a shadow work book that has been very
mm,
impactful for me. And you mentioned the instincts. So
hmm.
would you tell us just a little bit about what makes a subtype?
Yeah. So each of the Enneagram types have what's known as the passion of the type or an emotional vice. And it's sort of the dominant emotional experience that filters all other emotions and kind of informs and contributes to other emotions. It can inform and reinforce certain belief systems. It's sort of the all consuming experience. And it takes a while for most people who are new to the Enneagram to kind of grapple with the passion of their type. And none of them are flattering. Okay. And it's not like passion, like I'm passionate about golfing or baking or something like that. It's like, as Beatrice would put it, think of it as like a crime of passion. It's like this
Mm-hmm.
all consuming, it takes over and it's running the show until you bring conscious awareness for just how much it's in charge. And part
Mm-hmm.
of the journey of the Enneagram, using it as a growth tool, is to actually reclaim the essence of or excuse me, the virtue of the type, coming back to essence, which the virtue of the type is always the opposite of the passion, and it represents the truer self, right? So
Mm-hmm.
type 8, your husband's an 8. So right, the passion is lust. And that lust means that it's being bigger than one is, and it's needing things to be intense and to be powerful and
Mm-hmm.
more, right? It's just more. I need more. I need to power up. And it's compensating for a fear of vulnerability and being controlled and all of these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
When they reclaim virtue, the 8 comes back to innocence. And so it's like the opposite of lust. It's like this innocence. And so that's part of the journey. So we have the passion. And then we also have, as I mentioned earlier, these like biological based survival strategies. They're just instincts that are passed down to us generation to generation. And we have many instincts, I'm sure, but categorically, we have self preservation, which is all around, is my body safe? Do I have what I need physically, right? Think about the deer hearing leaves rustle behind him and he just instinctively runs. He doesn't stop to investigate if the leaves are a lion or the wind, because the investigation could cost him his life, right? So instinctively, every animal, every person, we know that we have instincts to protect our body. The social instinct is around survival in a group, right? So going back to an animal analogy, if there's some safety running with a herd, being in the center of the herd reduces the chance of being picked off by a predator. And in modern context and in human context, that sort of need for social um, support and how tribes have a greater chance of survival than somebody like that's a nomad on their own, right? So there's that instinctual desire to survive in group. And then there's the sexual or the one-to-one, and that's all around important one-to-one relationships, that intimate bond. It's the more competitive instinct. It's the creative instinct. It's that sort of drive to create and procreate and these kinds of things. Now, all these instincts are meant to just turn on and off without us having to think them into existence or feel them into existence. They just are. They're just in us, right? Thank God we don't have to. Which do I need to call on right now? Self-preservation or social? That wouldn't be instinct. That's thought. So these instincts, where they're meant to be balanced and just fire as needed, they become distorted because we grow up in a story. And by the way, as I read through the attachment styles, I started looking for instinctual variance potentially in some of this. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. We have these stories where they get distorted, right? So let's just say somebody who's self-preservation dominant. The self-preservation instinct is always on for that person, even when they don't need it to. It's like a light switch stuck in the on position. And there's various reasons for that. Self-preservation tends to be tied to a mother wound as or a sort of maternal figure of some kind, but there's a lot of reasons for why that could be. At the end of the day, there was a unconscious or subconscious belief that I wouldn't be kept safe and I better direct more energy and attention to self-preservation. And so now it informs everything. And because we have finite amount of energy and resources, it actually steals energy from the other instincts. And you end up with this sort of sequence, right? So you could be self-preservation followed by social and repressed sexual, or you could be self-preservation, sexual, social. And it's true for all of them. Now, the dominant instinct, the one that's in the always on position, goes through a sort of alchemy with the passion of the type. So the passion's like in the heart center and the instincts in the gut center. So you end up with this sort of combination. And it's why people of the same types often present so differently, because if you're a social 8, well, you're not as antisocially, oriented as sometimes 8s can be, right? In terms of, not I say antisocial, I mean less concerned with what the group thinks, right? 8s by, reputation sort of like have a path, they're going to bulldoze it, they're going to go, and they're less concerned about what the group thinks. But if that social instinct is in the on position, they suddenly become much softer and much more concerned with what the group thinks. So you could have a social 8 standing next to the sexual 8, who's the kind of the most intense 8, and they look very, very different. Now, sometimes we try to explain these differences. Oh, it must be wing differences or something like this. But truly what it comes down to is subtype. And so when you look at subtype, you have 3 different types of all 9 types. You end up with 27 different types. And actually, if you factor in the repressed instinct, you end up with 54 different varieties of type. And that can be really overwhelming, but it's that level of nuance and complexity that makes me love the Enneagram so much, because people are nuanced and complex, and it just creates layers and layers of opportunity to understand what's really going on. And the last thing I'll say about it is these instincts that are distorted, you can bring more balance to them. There are ways to work on this that brings up the repressed instinct through nurturing and care and recovery, and kind of trying to understand why you thought you could live without your repressed instinct, and to kind of calm down the dominant instinct and it becomes less intense. But yeah, that's how the subtypes sort of get formed.
That was excellent. Yeah, I love all the nuance that you brought to that conversation of how they get formed, because honestly, most people, like, they know about they might know about the subtypes, but they don't really know how all the pieces come together to form the subtype. So, and as humans, it's like we have needs for safety, we have needs for purpose, we have needs for belonging. Like, there's a whole slew of these things, and that's why the Enneagram is so helpful, because it's not this one dimension of reading external behaviors or presentation and how you show up in work or life or skills or outward things, but it just goes so much deeper, and it's unending what you can learn about yourself continuing to study the Enneagram. So yeah,
it is unending, which can feel daunting, but I actually think that's the invitation. A lot of people jump off the train pretty quick. They sort of learn the adjectives of their type and sort of recognize just how much layers and how much the Enneagram invites you to confront. And when I say confront, I mean compassionately interrogate and sort of appreciate about why we got stuck at a certain point on the Enneagram and why our instincts are sort of distorted the way they are. And it's an invitation to do a lifetime worth of work. And not everybody wants to go on that journey, and that's okay. But it's worthwhile for those who do.
Yeah. And from a spiritual perspective, the journey of being formed into, like you mentioned, our truer self. We've talked about that some on the podcast, that this idea that when you're dysregulated and you're in your shadows and you're in a place of fear or, unbalanced, you're in a false type of self. And, hearing you talk about the passion, thinking about that false self. It is a journey to be formed into your most true self that, our Creator wants us to be. So,
And
yeah.
and sometimes it's addition by subtraction a little bit, right? That growth work, it's sort of coming back to your true self, right? Coming back to the you that was you before you internalized all these messages that it wasn't going to be okay to be you, that, you had to survive my story, right? And I say survive in air quotes. For some people, that really means probably survive. For other people, it means to successfully navigate my family system, right? This is who I need to be,
Yeah.
right? And the layers and layers of personality come upon us, and that's how we sort of get rigidly stuck and are then consumed by the passion and sort of living on autopilot and just kind of living this sort of habitual existence. And part of the work is kind of unpeeling off some of those protective layers. But we don't do that by getting mad at those layers. We do it by sort of understanding and appreciating just how our egos served us and helped protect us, and kind of take a posture of gratitude for what they did for us, and then say, but I don't need this the way I needed it before. It's time to start reclaiming the parts of myself that I put away for somebody else.
Yeah, that's so true. Addition by subtraction. I agree 100%. It has felt like that for me. So you mentioned the attachment theory, which we're really big about here, and the intersection of Enneagram and like you said, maybe even subtypes. So let's talk about that. You took our assessment and read through the different patterns. What did you find out?
I found out that I excel in all of them. Apparently. Your our email exchange was super helpful, though, because I think you suggested, based on my scoring, that I should look at fearful avoidant, which I did, and I should say. I'm sitting with it. I think there's a lot that rings true, and I think there's a lot that rang true in the dismissive, and there's certainly, I think, a lot that really feels true in the secure attachment too, or at least is feeling more true. I don't know if I would have said 10 years ago that there was much in there that was true, or 15 years ago, but I think, and so I'd love to learn from you on this, right? Like how fixed these are, by what age, how much are they changeable, and what you're seeing with the Enneagram overlay.
Yeah, no. The beauty of bringing attachment theory into Enneagram work is because of the developmental formation that we experience, like age 0 to 5. Dr. Dan Siegel just recently, like within the last year, I believe, released a book for therapists about the 9 developmental pathways. And he really gets into this, and it's based on, I believe, 20 years of his own research with some other colleagues, but it really gets into the developmental and brain science behind how these happen. But, you mentioned feeling a lot of truth in the idea of security, that you answered a lot of questions, that it seems like you've grown in your security over the years, which is exactly what happens. These attachment is not fixed, but nobody's 100% secure. Nobody's 100% insecure. In that 0 to 5, especially time for attachment formation with your closest relationships and caregivers, it's that how much were you emotionally attuned to? How much independence were you trusted with? Like, did your parents allow you to explore and take some safe, healthy risk? Or were they hovering? Were you in spaces where you were afraid a lot, where it was an inconsistent response. So you never really knew what was coming around the corner. That creates a little bit of a hypervigilance, thinking about self-pres instinct. All of these things have an impact on which way you might lean, but it also has an impact on how your brain develops. Like, are you more right brain, sensory, emotional, creative? Are you more left brain, logical, linear, process oriented? Now, we're not one or the other totally, but as you know, like, people will lean one way or another. You can see it in their personalities. Yeah.
Super interesting. Are you seeing any type patterns and attachment styles in terms of, because I could see when I was reading through them, I was able to see various numbers in all the types. So and it would be easy to fall into, attribution error based on generalized type descriptions and say, well, that sentence and that type description aligns perfectly with the sentence description in this attachment style, which would be the wrong approach. But I'd be curious, like, if you're seeing patterns.
Yeah. I've broken it down because there's not a way to make it like all fives are dismissive avoidant. But you see a correlation between some of those types of behaviors, but then the instinct that they have, and how strong one wing might be, like, those are things that matter. But again, it's like, I believe we're always being formed. We're always accessing the resources from all the different numbers. And so as you grow in learning how to balance and learn self-awareness and learn how to do self-regulation and how to verbally process. And we teach all like 7 different skills, and even just soul care and play. Like, that's not just for 7s, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So practicing is a big part of growing in security. And it is absolutely changeable. Some people call it earned secure attachment. I've heard it called realized secure attachment. But either way, there is as you grow in trying to access more secure thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, you grow in security.
So interesting. And I don't know if anybody's already done the research or is doing it, but I keep coming back to this idea of being really curious around instinctual sequencing and the attachment styles. I just think there's maybe something there, and I'm not sure how it would present, but somebody that has money for a big research study should do it.
Yeah. No, I love it. So I think the big things that to think about in your own life and relationships as you go forward, if fearful avoidant is maybe where you started and you've grown in some security, is just noticing places where you feel betrayal. Okay. So not necessarily the big type of betrayal that you think about somebody, stealing your money or cheating on you or something like that, but smaller betrayals, like, you said you were going to blank, but you didn't, what that feels like and how unsafe that can feel in moments that you feel wronged. And I think the presence of hypervigilance is another big one. Feeling so ready almost to fight or flee. All people can feel that, but fearful avoidants feel it a lot.
I'm smiling because I've been in my share of therapy, and a couple of therapists in particular. For a season, I was doing some work with a sort of somatic therapist / coach, and she noticed in particular the way I would sit on the couch, that I had one leg kind of like one foot up on the couch, and I was like ready, and like she would ask me like what I was feeling in my legs, and if I took notice, they were tense and ready to go. Like I was basically sitting in a starting running position, almost like I was ready to do the 100-yard dash if at any moment I needed to get the hell out of there. Like that's just, and I've since noticed so many times, like when I do a body scan, not so much when have been alone or I'm like in a really good feeling secure place, but like if I just take a moment to check in with myself, maybe in social environments or what have you, my legs naturally are tense. It's like they're ready to flee, ready to move all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. So you mentioned in the fearful avoidant, that sort of like, I don't know, does that ring true for fearful avoidance, I guess is what I'm asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fight or flee. Oftentimes more of the fight. But I guess it depends on the situation.
Mm,
Um, you know, it's a complex thing, but fear would be the present emotion that causes the fight or flee. You
mm,
are you're feeling like nothing's ever totally trustable or secure because of the inconsistencies
mhm,
and how maybe a parent would have been warm and connected at times, but then at times it's like they had the most unpredictable response and you just can never quite figure out what it is that you're supposed to do. So you're just like always ready.
And does that cement itself? I imagine the answer is yes. You mentioned that a lot of this happens between birth and 5 years old,
Hmm.
but I imagine that layers and layers up, depending all the way through
Yeah.
adolescence and beyond. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know in my case, my parents had a good bit of just, unpredictable things in my earliest years where they were going through their own healing work. And so
Mm,
I can only imagine those first, 5 to 8 years of my life were, um, in the stories that I've heard and stuff like that, where it was just like their marriage was on the rocks at times, just trying to figure out their own healing journeys. And it was just probably felt unpredictable for me.
mm,
But then my later years, a lot of security was there. Especially on my mom's side, she did so much growth work and really learned how to regulate her own system and still
mm,
continues to do that type of work. So I can say that a lot of my realized security was really kind of passed down from learning some of those self-awareness practices and behaviors and just seeing that modeled for me. So I think just the beauty of like it's never too late. I mean, even in adult relationships, you can earn security between you and your parent, or if you and your spouse have insecurities in your attachment styles, like growth and healing like is very possible.
mm. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So helpful.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about, hold on one second. I went out of order a little bit. Oh, okay. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your evolving leader. On the Evolving Leader podcast, you talk about a need for more human leadership.
Mm,
Um, and we love to talk about the nervous system and how a person's presence can make you feel safe. And so I was really interested to ask you in your work with businesses as leaders who are wanting to learn how to be more human and more emotionally aware. What does it look like when they do that work?
mm,
Safety on a team.
mm. Yeah, that's a great question. Um, well, in my experience, when I work with leaders around this idea, there is um, almost always, if not always, a sort of deep appreciation for the invitation to be able to do it. Meaning, as leaders, we internalize a picture of what we think it looks like, right? So we try to show up, right? All leaders, in some ways, almost kind of tend to go to point 3 on the Enneagram and kind of perform a leadership role. Like, this is what good leaders look like, and this is what I need to do. And of course, there's some of the politics and navigating the culture they're in, and they've got bosses above them and all of these things. But there's this felt desire to be able to show up in a more connected, integrated, whole way. And so the starting point of just doing leadership development work where we actually spend quite a bit of time teaching people how to connect with the somatic elements of their body, what's actually happening physically, paying attention and developing what's called interoceptive sensitivity. So you become more aware of the signals that are coming from your body and informing so much of what your brain is then interpreting with those signals and predicting about the world and predicting about what needs to happen, and how all of that informs your daily decision making, which is the number one role of leaders, is to make decisions. And oh, by the way, you bring all this sort of emotional experience, and we've talked a lot about it already, sitting with the emotions long enough to understand what they're telling you, because all emotions are communicating something about a need. And
Mm-hmm.
so the more human element, even though the Evolving Leader is not an Enneagram podcast, we've talked about it, but it's not an Enneagram podcast, is in many ways, it's not exclusively this, it's learning to intentionally connect to the head, heart, and body. And by doing that, leaders show up more authentically. They show up more intentionally. They show up, to your question, creating the conditions where others can show up more fully and therefore feel safe to do it, right? There's a appropriate level of vulnerability. There's the willingness to say, I don't know when I don't know, and let's collectively solve this challenge together, and bringing in all the sort of diverse perspectives. And there's all of that, right? Instead of the default setting, not for everyone, but for many, which is, I'm paid to know everything, decide everything. You are paid to decide things, but like almost, without support, almost like I have to be in this role of ultimate knower, almost this like godlike complex of like, this is what leadership looks like. When you break through all that and invite the whole human to show up, you see massive changes in how teams show up, and the discretionary effort they bring to the table. And everybody just, it's not perfect, but it's not trying to be perfect. It's not trying to be performative. It's being real.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel so grateful to be able to be part of a conduit in creating some of that shift for people.
Mm. That's amazing. And like you said, that the 70% of success in business is tied to these types of soft skills and emotional awareness and
Yeah. I'm on
things
a
like that.
campaign to rid the world of the term soft skills, because I'm like, if 70% of your success is tied to this, we can't call it soft anymore, right? Like, it's got to be essential. These are your essential skills. This
Huh.
is what's going to make you win or lose, for lack of a better term. Like,
Yeah.
this is the stuff, right?
Interesting. Yeah. See, I don't have that same association in my mind with soft skills. I think of it as, and maybe it's because I'm a 4, but like I have a type of resilience in my program that I call soft resilience
Mm.
because of the association with resilience being grit and, armoring up and being super strong. A lot of people think about
Yeah.
resilience as that type of strength. And I see a softer strength as
Yeah.
a more regulated, curious, right? And
Oh,
so
I love
anyway,
that.
I think
No, I,
about soft skills like that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I didn't mean to project my baggage on you with the soft skills, essential skills. But, certainly for many types on the Enneagram, right? Like for an 8,
Mhm.
leaning deeply into softness is probably good work for that leader,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas for a 9 or a 2, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a different kind of work to tap
Yeah.
into a greater level of strength and sort of, yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
I know in corporate life,
Sure.
soft skills almost become this like, well, I guess I have to tolerate the fact that we have to think about this a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to turn up the pressure on the reality that this is actually the stuff that'll make your company successful or fail. So
Yeah.
let's have the appropriate level of conversation and urgency around that.
Mhm. I love the intention behind that. I love that. My mind just didn't go there.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a corporate setting, which is not who I work with typically,
Mm.
um, I could see that seeing softness as a weakness or something of that nature, that it's like an afterthought. But
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
stuff. So, with that part of the conversation, we mentioned the Ennea flip, but I know
Mm.
this is a resource you designed for predominantly, work settings. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that resource?
Yeah. Thank you so much. So having taught several Enneagram courses in corporations and with teams, the number one question is always, that was a lot. What do I do with it next? How do I remember all this stuff? How do I put this into action? Not everybody in that room is going to drink the Kool-Aid like me and go on a multi-decade journey of Enneagram exploration. They want to know what to do with it. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to create something that was a very useful kind of memory jogger, but like something you could really use to apply with your colleagues immediately, even if all you ever do is a 3-hour Enneagram introductory workshop. And so I collaborated with a friend, Ashley Sikorsky, who already had an Enneagram product in the world called Nine Shapes, which is conversation cards around the Enneagram. And we designed this thing called the Enneaflip. And the the first few pages in this book are kind of like refresher around the basics that we've covered in whatever session you've been part of, body types and all those kind of differentiations. The center of the book is where it gets good. Really good, I think, is that the page is split apart, and on the left side you flip to your type, and on the right side you flip to the type of the person who you might be preparing to enter a conversation with or go into a meeting. So you might
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, I'm a 4, and I don't really remember what Scott said about ones, but I know so and so is a 1, and I'm have a meeting with them at 3:00 today. You just flip to 4 on your side and 1 on their side, and you can do this basic, quick comparison around basic approach and style, communication, potential blind spots, and it gives you the nudge to then think about how to flex to meet the needs of that person and be heard in the way that that person hears you or will hear you, right? So it allows for us to say, hey, I have a choice to not show up in my default settings and approach this conversation the way that I necessarily would want to. I have a chance to flex and meet them where they are and hopefully get some greater progress in the process. And we're selling to a lot of Enneagram teachers. That's our number one client, is that they are doing workshops and saying, I need a resource too. And getting really, it's been in the world now for several years, and yeah, really good feedback for its pragmatism.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it so much. Actually,
Oh, you
oops,
have it.
I
There
have
it
it
is.
right
Yes.
here. And
Nice.
like Scott mentioned, it's got that flip, me and them, and then you can flip. I mean, I know you can't see, but you can see how your side is here, and then the other person would be over here. So 2 and 5. There we go. So little
Thank you.
visual.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun to make, and I'm glad that it's meeting a need.
Good, good. Okay, so give us the 2-minute overview of what your book is all about and how it might help people.
So thank you. As I wanted to take what was a sort of proven model of efficacy in the world, this emotional intelligence model, and there's different frameworks, different models that measure slightly different things, but they all get at the same basic attributes. And I wanted to overlay the Enneagram and sort of use these 5 frameworks. So I use the framework of self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal relationships, decision-making, and stress, and
Mm-hmm.
looked at each of the 9 types when they are in high awareness and health and how they might show up. So how does each of the 9 types see themselves when they're healthy? How do they see themselves when maybe they're really in the grip of the passion and they're not super aware? How do they express themselves when they're super healthy or when they're not? And so we did this journey in the book around what that would look like, and then some growth ideas about how to start noticing when you're in the lower awareness and less sort of healthy or more in the grip of your sort of vice, and what to do about it. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
idea of the book. It's intentionally not too cumbersome, right? We kept it relatively small
Mm-hmm.
because it was meant to be, and it is meant to be a guide for how to get underneath the waterline of consciousness in all of these dimensions of emotional intelligence that you might have all this great intention for building, and you want to see yourself well and you want to express yourself well. But as we've talked about throughout this conversation, it's hard to stay there when you don't really know why. And so I wanted to create a resource where it could maybe help you uncover some of the whys and then make shifts that are sustainable. So that's the idea of the Enneagram of Emotional Intelligence.
Awesome. And my husband and I have had the privilege of going through the book that you wrote with our marriage group. And so leading people through
Love that.
all of their numbers and growing in the actionable strategies, like what to do. I mean, it's definitely a resource that you can come back to. So I use it often and I share it with clients and stuff. So
Thank you.
thank you for writing it.
Oh, thank you for sharing it and for working with it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, something I like to ask people in terms of transformation, we say transformation is going beyond your form. So, currently in life, what's a way that you are seeking to move beyond your form?
That's a good question. Really try to stay very committed to a sort of meditation practice. For me, it's really, especially as a 3 who gets really defaults back to movement and getting stuff done and on to the next thing and let's get to the point. And it's really easy, no matter how much I study the Enneagram or become more aware of my patterns and my pain. Default settings, those neural pathways are well worn, and I can default into forgetting what I feel. And 2 or 3 days go by, and I've just been like, ticking things off the to-do list and getting stuff done. So the intentionality of having a real focus on coming back to my breath really has been invaluable in connecting back to my heart, my body, and my head, slowing down, and then creating the space after I'm done with sort of breath work and focus meditation. I try to create some space to just walk a little bit. Sometimes I'll just take a short walk and I just to see what will come up for me in the afterglow of meditation, right? And sort of see what happens. And that's a very simple thing for me, but it's helping me to, what I really am after is to stay more open and receptive and to be in the flow of life and not sort of just take the bull by the horn so much, which is my tendency. And that's good growth work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's been my focus. I keep coming back to, and intentionally, and this is true for all types, cultivating that objective inner witness that just notices when you're back in personality and you're back in ego, and not with no self-shame. It has to be done with self-friendship and compassion and patience and care and all the things that we tend to want to give to others but don't always give to ourselves. And especially maybe as a 3, and probably for ones listening, like, you can really move into, but gosh, I thought I conquered that, I thought I was beyond that, and I just failed, and maybe want to throw it all away, or you get really sort of self-shaming, and all of that is so counterproductive. So constantly working on that inner witness that's done with this impartiality, where I just notice and I just get curious about it. And so practice and meditation does help me to stay more open and curious, but it gets it's those things. It's a discipline of intentional focus where I'm not producing anything, and constantly trying to stay with self-witnessing in the most compassionate, soft, to use your words, and a softness that I need. I need that softness the way that you defined it. So that's a big focus for me.
And I have no doubt that it's going to grow your capacity and resilience as a result. So that's beautiful. I love that. And to be a man who is embracing, emotional awareness, meditation, slowing down, it's really needed. And I think it's awesome. So
Well,
yeah.
I would leave us maybe with, well, I shouldn't close your show. I'll let you close your show. But I will say, the Enneagram, the Enneagram isn't the point, right? The Enneagram points you to the work that you need to do, the healing that you need to get and focus on, the wounds that need tending to. And so just stepping into that invitation, if everyone just in the whole world, right, or just even the people listening to this show, made a commitment to just doing a little bit of that work slowly. Be patient with yourself. Don't try to do a 180. Don't try to transform overnight. Like, don't focus on being transformed. Focus on the work one step at a time, one day at a time kind of thing. The ripple effect from that, I really believe this work, that if people stepped into it, has the power to transform much more than ourselves, but the very world that we're in, which is completely fractured and broken and suffering from a lack of self-awareness and all of those kinds of things. And if we all just, got 20% more healed and more whole and integrated, what that does for our children and their children after them and our friends and our community, it just spreads, and the world needs healing and needs people committed to their own healing. That's how we can help a fractured world.
Yeah, I love that. We'll just close in prayer. But I do leave our listeners with a blessing that is, it says, may you be open, curious, and aware to everything that comes to you today, because you know it is for your transformation. Thanks again, Scott, for being with us.
Thank you, Jess.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Transforming Us podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and that you found it helpful. If you loved what you heard, we would really appreciate if you would take a moment and leave us a 5-star review and rating. Your support helps us reach more listeners like you.
And also, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more relationship content. Then, if you're looking to take your growth to the next level, check out our coaching services and groups at transformingus.org.
We're here to help you transform your patterns and enjoy more secure relationships.
Until next time, in the words of Raoul Shane, you do not need to do big things. Just do small things in a big way. Then, transformation